Have you ever wondered what would happen if you woke up tomorrow and every bank was just closed? Your debit card doesn't work. ATMs are just useless metal boxes. Online banking, a blank page. Sounds like a scene from a disaster movie, right? But what would actually happen? Let's dive into this wild what-if scenario and explore the immediate chaos and the surprising ways humanity might adapt. First, let's talk about the immediate panic. The very first thing you'd notice is that your money, the digital numbers you see in your banking app, is inaccessible. That means no paying for your morning coffee with a card, no online shopping, no paying bills electronically. The only money that would matter is the physical cash you have in your wallet or stashed under your mattress. Within hours, this would trigger widespread panic. People would rush to stores to buy essentials like food, water, and fuel. But since most transactions are digital, commerce would grind to a halt. Businesses couldn't accept card payments, and they couldn't pay their employees or suppliers. The global economy, which is built on a constant flow of digital credit and debt, would freeze solid. In the first 24 to 48 hours, the primary problem would be access. Think about your daily life. Your paycheck is probably direct deposited. Your rent or mortgage is likely an auto payment. Your utility bills, your phone bill, your subscriptions, all tied to your bank account. Without banks, none of that works. Employers wouldn't be able to pay their staff. Landlords wouldn't receive rent. Power companies wouldn't get paid. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's a systemic breakdown. The supply chain would be one of the first major casualties. Truck drivers who need to pay for fuel couldn't refuel their rigs. Ports that rely on electronic payments for customs and fees would be paralyzed. The food that's normally transported across the country would get stuck, leading to empty grocery store shelves within a week. Now let's look at the second wave of problems. The collapse of credit. Modern economies don't just run on money we have. They run on money we've been loaned. Businesses take out loans to expand and manage cash flow. Individuals use mortgages to buy homes and credit cards for large purchases. When banks shut down, this entire system of credit evaporates. The value of assets would plummet. The stock market would become meaningless because you can't buy or sell shares. The real estate market would be frozen. Who could buy a house with no mortgage? The concept of value itself would be thrown into question. Your life savings, your retirement fund, your investments, they would all become inaccessible digital ghosts. As days turn into weeks, society would be forced to adapt. Initially, it would be a chaotic free-for-all. Cash would be king, but only for a short time. As people run out of physical currency, a barter system would naturally emerge. Your neighbor might trade you a dozen eggs from their chickens for some of your canned goods. A skilled mechanic might fix your car in exchange for firewood. Communities would have to become incredibly localized. Your immediate neighborhood would become your entire economic world. This might sound a bit rustic and charming, but it would also be incredibly inefficient. How do you trade a car for 1,000 loaves of bread over time? How does a doctor get paid for complex surgery? Bartering works for simple exchanges, but it can't support a complex modern society. This is where human ingenuity would hopefully kick in. New forms of currency would likely arise. Local communities might start issuing their own scrip or IOUs, basically trusted promissory notes. A well-respected farm, for example, could issue tokens that are redeemable for food. These tokens could then start circulating as a local currency. We might also see a rise in alternative assets. Things with tangible, universally recognized value, like precious metals, would become a medium of exchange. People would also look to decentralized digital currencies, like cryptocurrencies, as a potential alternative. However, this comes with its own major hurdle. Without the traditional internet infrastructure, which is run by companies that can no longer pay their bills or employees, how would people access the blockchain? The internet itself could become unstable. Governments would not stand by idly, of course. They would declare a state of emergency. Martial law might be implemented to control looting and civil unrest. The government would face an impossible task: how to reboot the financial system. They could try to physically print massive amounts of cash and distribute it, but this would be a logistical nightmare and would likely lead to hyperinflation, making the new cash worthless almost as soon as it's printed. The more likely scenario is a financial reset. This would involve creating a new banking system from scratch. But what would that look like? Would all previous account balances be honored? It's hard to say. The data might be lost or inaccessible. It's possible that everyone would be started over with a universal basic income deposited into a new, government-run digital wallet. This would be a monumental and controversial undertaking, essentially rewriting the financial DNA of the entire world. Let's consider the long-term social impact. A world without banks would dramatically reshape our society. The gap between the haves and the have-nots might be redefined. Those with practical skills, farming, medicine, construction, repair, would become the new elite. Knowledge workers whose jobs rely on a digital infrastructure might find their skills are suddenly less valuable. We would become more community-focused out of sheer necessity. Trust in your neighbors would be more important than your credit score. This could lead to a resurgence of tight-knit communities, but it could also lead to isolationism and suspicion of outsiders. International relations would be completely upended. Global trade would cease, and countries would be forced to become self-sufficient. This could lead to either greater global cooperation to solve the crisis or more conflict over scarce resources. So could this actually happen? A total, simultaneous, global shutdown of all banks is extremely unlikely. Banks have extensive contingency plans, and governments have powerful tools to prevent a total collapse. The 2008 financial crisis showed us how interconnected and fragile the system is. But it also showed how far governments will go to prevent a complete meltdown. A more realistic, though still terrifying scenario is a massive cyber attack that targets the core infrastructure of the banking system. Such an attack could disable the system for days or even weeks, triggering many of the effects we've discussed. This is why cybersecurity for financial institutions is one of the most critical security issues of our time. In the end, this thought experiment shows us something fundamental. Our modern world is built on a foundation of trust. We trust that the numbers in our bank account represent real value. We trust that the system will be there tomorrow. The moment that trust is broken, the entire structure begins to crumble. While a world without banks would be chaotic and difficult, it also highlights human resilience and our ability to create new systems and communities when old ones fail. It's a stark reminder to be prepared, to value practical skills, and to build strong community bonds. Those are the things that hold true value, with or without a bank. What do you think? What would you do in the first 24 hours? Let me know your survival plan in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoy exploring these big what-if questions, make sure to like and subscribe for more. See you next time.